Hello everybody, my name is Stacia Dials and I'm an English teacher at Murphy High School. Today we'll be discussing the English 10 lesson on text structure. Let's go ahead and unpack our standard before we begin. So today we will be discussing RI 10.3, which is to analyze how the author unfolds an analysis or series of ideas or events, including the order in which the points are made, how they are introduced and developed, and then the connections that are drawn between them. I want you to go ahead and get out your paper and pencil and get ready to take a few notes. Today we are going to go over the 7 types of text structure. The first type is cause and effect, chronological order, compare and contrast, order of importance, problem and solution, sequence and process writing, and then spatial descriptive writing. Make sure you have your pencil and paper ready so that you can copy down these terms as we get to them. Our first type of text structure is cause and effect. I want you to make sure that you are copying down this definition that I've underlined for you. So the definition of the cause and effect is that it's the results of something are explained. So as you write that down, I'm going to read an example to you. So the first example says that the dodo bird used to roam in large flocks across America. Interestingly, the dodo wasn't startled by gunshot. Because of this, frontiermen would kill entire flocks in one sitting. Unable to sustain these attacks, the dodo was hunted to extinction. So here, if we're dealing with the text structure of cause and effect, we are going to be discussing the result of something and how it's explained. So look here at this explanation. Here we have the dodo birds who roamed in a large flock, but the dodo bird wasn't startled by gunshot. Here's the issue there. Because they were not startled by gunshot, the frontiermen would kill the entire flocks in one sitting. Unable to sustain these attacks, the dodo was hunted to extinction. So because the dodo was not startled by the gunshot, the effect of that, or that the hunters were able to kill them and eventually lead to their extinction. Let's look at the second type. The second type of text structure is chronological. This is when information in the passage is organized in order of time. Again, copy down this definition as I review the examples. The first example says that Jack and Jill ran up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. I'm sure we're all familiar with this nursery rhyme, but you might not have realized that this little rhyme actually follows chronological order. We're talking about the way that the events unfold and in the time. So look here at the explanation of this example. The first thing that happens in time-wise is that Jack runs up the hill. After, Jack falls down. Then the next thing that happens in time is that Jill comes tumbling after. So even though this is a simple nursery rhyme that we're all familiar with, we can see now that this does follow chronological order. Let's look at the next. It's compare and contrast. When we compare and contrast, this is when we have 2 or more things described, then their similarities and differences are discussed. Look at the example. Linux and Windows are both operating systems. Computers use them to run programs. Linux is totally free and open source, so users can improve or otherwise modify the source code. Windows is proprietary, so it costs money to use, and users are prohibited from altering the source code. Now, the first thing that we're supposed to do with compare and contrast is have 2 things described. Let's look at this explanation. Here in the very first sentence, we are introduced to the 2 topics, which is Linux and Windows. They are both operating systems. So we have 2 things, and here they're being compared because they are similar in the fact that they are both operating systems. Now, as the text continues, it goes to show you that Linux is totally free and open source. Now, on the other side, Windows is proprietary, meaning that users are prohibited from altering the source code. So here we have a contrast. We have 2 subjects. We show how they are similar, both being operating systems, and then we show how their differences are also described. Great job. Make sure you keep copying these definitions so you can apply them in our practice at the end of the lesson. All right, our next type of text structure is order of importance. Now, the order of importance is when information is expressed as in a hierarchy or a priority. Here the example says, here are the 3 worst things that you can do on a date. First, you could tell jokes that aren't funny and laugh really hard at yourself. This will make you look bad. Worse, though, you could offend your date. One bad joke may cause your date to lash out at you, hence ruining the engagement. But the worst thing that you can do is to appear slovenly. By not showering and properly grooming, you may repulse your date, and this is the worst thing that you can do. So let's look at the order of importance here in this little scenario. Here we have this evidence. The very first thing says 3 worst things that you can do on a date. So we know that there are 3 faults you could make. Let's see if any of them are more important than the others. The first one is introduced by this key word. It says first. First, you could tell jokes that aren't funny and laugh really hard at yourself. This would not be a good move. Now let's go on and continue with the next piece of evidence. It says worse, though, you could offend your date. So here it's bad to tell a joke, but it's even worse if you offend your date. So here we're seeing a little bit of hierarchy or order of importance. The next piece of evidence says, but the worst thing that you can do is to appear slovenly. So here we understand that the worst thing you can do is to appear slovenly. Now, I know my kids in my classroom would probably not know what slovenly is and have a question about that. But let's look at this text. It gives us a context clue definition. What is slovenly? If you notice, I underlined it in the passage. It says slovenly is basically not showering and properly grooming. So it's to have a sloppy appearance. The last piece of evidence kind of seals the deal and lets us know that we're correct about our assumption. It says, this is the worst thing that you can do. So there is an order of importance here. Showing up slovenly to a date is the worst absolute thing. We definitely have an order of importance here. All right, let's move on to problem and solution. When you're dealing with the problem and solution text structure, you're going to have a problem described, and in the passage, there's going to be a response or a solution proposed or explained. Thousands of people die each year in car accidents involving drugs or alcohol. Lives could be saved if our own town adopts a free public taxi service. By providing such a service, we could prevent intoxicated drivers from endangering themselves or others. Let's see if our definition of problem and solution text structure follows what our passage says. So at the very beginning, we should have a problem described. If you notice in this explanation, the problem is clearly described in the very first sentence. The problem is that thousands of people die each year in car accidents involving drugs or alcohol. Now, as the passage continues, to follow problem and solution, we should have a response or solution brought up. The response in this passage says that if our town adopts a free public taxi service, lives could be saved. It also continues that with this taxi service, they could prevent intoxicated drivers from endangering themselves or others. So this nice and neatly ties in the problem and solution. The problem is introduced at the very beginning, and then solutions are provided as the passage continues. Next, we have sequence process writing. Okay, this is kind of like explanatory writing or expository. So this is a sequence or process writing. This is when information is organized in steps or a process is explained in the order in which it occurs. Look at this example. It says eating cereal is easy. First, get out your materials. Next, pour your cereal in the bowl, add milk, and enjoy. So here we are explaining a process. Well, what's our process? It's how to eat cereal. It's basically broken down for you in very easy signal words. You have first, get out your material. Next, pour your cereal in the bowl, and then you enjoy. It gives you those 3 simple processes to where you can make a bowl of cereal. All right, our last one, this is number 7, is spatial or descriptive writing. So spatial or descriptive writing is when information is organized in order of space, not time, but space. Think of top to bottom, left to right. Look at this example as you write down the definition. It says, when you walk into my bedroom, there is a window facing you. To the right of that is a dresser and a television, and then on the other side of the window is my bed. Notice here in this passage, our author is giving us spatial descriptive writing. It is showing us where things are organized as far as space is concerned in the room. The first piece of evidence shows you that there's a window facing you. Then to the right of that is a dresser and a television. And then on the other side is the window by my bed. So here we are broken down the spatial reasoning within the room. Okay, you've got all 7 definitions now, hopefully, and you can apply them to a little bit of practice. Here we go. All matter, all things can be changed in 2 ways, chemically and physically. Both chemical and physical changes affect the state of matter. Physical changes are those that do not change the makeup or identity of the matter. For example, clay will bend or flatten if squeezed, but it will still be clay. Changing the shape of clay is a physical change and does not change the matter's identity. Chemical changes turn the matter into a new kind of matter with different properties. For example, when paper is burnt, it becomes ash and will never be paper again. The difference is that physical changes are temporary or only last for a little while. Chemical changes are permanent, which means they last forever. Physical and chemical changes both affect the state of matter. I want you to look at those 7 definitions that you wrote down, and I want you to ask yourself, do you feel like this is chronological order, problem and solution, order of importance, spatial, or comparing and contrasting? Go ahead and write your option down, and let's see if you're correct. Hopefully you wrote E, compare and contrast. So let's look at the evidence that would have led us to this answer. Here we have 2 things are brought up. We have a chemical and we have a physical change. So we're comparing 2 things. They have something alike because both affect the state of matter. Then we have how they are contrasted, the differences. Physical changes do not change the makeup or identity, whereas chemical changes turn the matter into a new kind of matter. Here it shows us how these 2 changes are different. Then it continues to say that physical changes are temporary and only last for a little while. Chemical changes are permanent. This again shows a contrast. And then it sums up the passage by saying that physical and chemical changes both affect the state of matter, which is a comparison because it shows us how they are alike. Great job. Practice 2. Robert James Fisher was born in Chicago, yet he unlocked the secrets of chess in a Brooklyn apartment right above a candy store. At the age of 6, he taught himself to play by following the instruction booklet that came with his chessboard. After spending much of his childhood in chess clubs, Fisher said that one day, I just got good. That may have been a bit of an understatement. At the age of 13, he won the U.S. Junior Chess Championship. He was the youngest junior champion ever. At the age of 14, he won the U.S. Championship, also becoming the youngest U.S. champion in history. Fisher even went on to become the world champion of chess, but he would also grow to become his own worst enemy. He forfeited the championship to the next challenger without even making a move. The rise of a chess superstar ended with a fizzle. So take a minute to look at this passage and your definitions for the type of text structure. I'll give you a few moments to decide what answer would be the best choice. A, chronological order. B, problem and solution. C, order of importance. D, spatial. Or E, compare and contrast. Okay, hopefully you said A, chronological order. Let's look at the evidence in the text that shows us this is the correct answer. Here at the very beginning, we're introduced to our character, or our person here is Robert James Fisher. It tells us his birth. His birth begins in Chicago, very first step of his life. Then it continues to say that age 6, he taught himself by playing and following the instructions in the booklet. It continues to then go from 6 to 13, where he won the U.S. Junior Chess Championship. Again, at the age 14, he won the U.S. Championship. This passage shows us the chronological order of Robert James Fisher's life and his career in chess. Here we go, number 3. Don't let the tigers vanish. These majestic beasts are disappearing at an alarming rate. We should write to our congresspeople. If we let them know that we demand the preservation of this species, maybe we can make a difference. We should also donate some of our money to save the tigers. Help support those who fight the hardest to preserve these tigers. We owe it to our grandchildren to do something. Now, what type of text structure do you think that this is organized in? Is it A, problem and solution, B, chronological order, C, descriptive writing, D, order of importance, or E, sequence process writing? Hopefully you said A, problem and solution. Here it clearly states in the very first sentence that we have an issue. The tigers are vanishing. They are disappearing at an alarming rate. This is our problem. Now, what's the solution here? 1, we could write to our congresspeople. That can help make a difference. You could also donate some of your money to Save the Tigers organization and help support those who fight the hardest to preserve the tigers. Practice 4. Many are confused about why our economy went to shambles in 2008. The crisis was actually the result of many complex factors. First, easy credit conditions allowed people who were unworthy of credit to borrow. Even people who had no income were eligible for large loans. Second, banks bundled these toxic loans into packages and sold them. Third, large insurance firms backed these packages. They misrepresented these high-risk loans as safe investments. Fourth, rapid growth in the housing market led to people buying too many houses. All these factors created bubbles of speculation. The bubbles burst, sending the whole market into a downward spiral. Employers lost capital and laid off employees. Consumers' spending plummeted. Business suffered. The economy is like a big boat, and once it gets moving quickly in the wrong direction, it's hard to turn around. Now, I know that was a longer passage, so I want you to glance at that for a moment and think to yourself, is this put in A, chronological organization, B, cause and effect, C, spatial organization, D, compare and contrast, or E, problem and solution? Hopefully you said that it was cause and effect. So here we have an issue. The issue is that there was a crisis in our economy in 2008. Now, it says in the text that the crisis was actually the result of many complex factors. So these would all affect the situation. The first is that the easy credit conditions allowed people who were unworthy of credit to borrow. It also shows us the effect of banks bundling these toxic loans into packages and selling them. Then it goes on to back that large insurance firms also backed these packages. Fourth, rapid growth in the housing market led to people buying too many houses. All of these factors created bubbles of speculation. The bubbles burst, sending the whole market into a downward spiral. So all of these causes had a major effect on the housing market crisis. All right, practice number 5. Before applying the screen protector, clean the surface of your phone's screen with a soft cloth. Once the surface of your screen is clean, remove the paper backing on the screen protector. Evenly apply the sticky side of the screen protector to your phone's screen. Smooth out any air bubbles trapped on between the protector and the phone screen, and enjoy the added protection. Most of you high school students are expert as this because We all crack our phones. So, what type of text structure is this passage written in? Would it be A, cause and effect, B, sequence process writing, C, descriptive writing, D, compare and contrast, or E, order of importance? Well, hopefully you said that the answer was B, sequence or process writing. Here, it clearly tells us that at the very first sentence or phrase that we are going to be applying a screen protector. So we know what we're doing in this passage. And then it tells you the simple steps. 1, you clean the surface. The next step is to remove the paper backing, evenly apply the sticky side, smooth out any air bubbles trapped, and enjoy the added protection. This passage clearly maps out the sequence or process. All right, guys, we are on our last practice. Y'all are doing an amazing job. Okay, here we go. The cave was overwhelmingly blue. It was dark, except for a few small pinholes of light pouring through the ceiling. The stalactites on the ceiling dripped with humidity. The stalagmites on the floor of the cave glistened sharp and looked like teeth. In the middle of the cave was a lone dinosaur licking his wounds. Blood trailed from where he sat to the mouth of the cave. A drum beat in the distance. All right, what type of writing is this? A, sequent process writing. B, spatial descriptive writing. C, order of importance. D, compare and contrast. Or E, problem and solution. Hopefully you chose B. This is definitely descriptive writing, and the author does a beautiful job with this. Here he introduces in the beginning that the cave was overwhelmingly blue. It was dark. There was only a few small pinholes of light pouring through the ceiling. The spikes on the ceiling dripped with humidity, and then the spikes on the floor of the cave glistened sharp and looked like teeth. In the middle of the cave was a lone dinosaur licking his wounds. Blood trailed from where he sat to the mouth of the cave, and a drum beat in the distance. You can see here that the author really went out of their way to incorporate certain imagery words to create that picture in your mind. Y'all have done an absolutely amazing job. I cannot believe you've already mastered text structure in one day. Next week, we're going to go over some longer passages and see how well you do with everything we've learned thus far. You did a good job, and I can't wait to see you next week.